Hi. I think the most important thing that I've gotten from Reality Transurfing, and really probably the missing piece for me in a big way, always with creating in the realm of my life of relationships, things with other people, that was always my difficult area, was the concept of importance and excess potential. I'm gonna make another video, I think, after this, maybe while I'm still sitting here, about excess potential, which is, as Reality Transurfing describes it, is basically when too much importance is put on something, or basically excess potential happens when something's out of balance. So, all the Eastern religions talk about balance, and like being desireless. And this can be misconstrued, I think, very easily. And I know from personal experience, posting on Reddit can be taken super personally by people. Like there's something wrong with them if they have a desire that they think is important. And it's really not about that. It's about balancing the energy so that you can remain centered, which is the absolute most, that's the point, that's the place from which you can create things effortlessly. When you don't care about something and you get the hang of what it feels like to choose a thing you want to appear in your reality, or choose something that you want to have happen, when you get the hang of what that feels like and how to do that, how you personally do that, when you try to do that operating from a centered place emotionally, where you haven't attributed a whole bunch of importance to something, it's just amazing how quickly things happen. I mean, it's clear to me reading this book, when I picked up Reality Transurfing and I got to this point, I was just like, bingo. That was like it. I got it. I got what was preventing me from being successful in certain areas where I had been effortlessly successful in others. So I think I just want to read this section. You should really get this book. I mean, this is probably the most important book I've ever read. It's probably the most useful book I've ever read. Every now and then there's a book where I pick it up and I just go, oh man, this tied so many things together for me. Science of Getting Rich was one of those. Marianne Williamson, A Return to Love, was one of those. And now this book, Reality Transurfing, which I still haven't even finished, actually. It gave me so much food for thought that I just had to kind of stop. And then when coronavirus, I don't know, my whole routine's off. But let me just read this section to you. It's a few pages long. So I kind of explained the excess potential thing. That is where there is an imbalance of energy and a force will come in to correct that. So we will look at the idea of importance, as this is the most common cause of excess potential. Importance arises when something is attributed excess meaning. Importance represents excess potential in pure form. This made perfect sense to me. When you want something so badly, it's just, there's too much on it. There's too much writing on it. And that to me, excess potential in pure form, that spoke to me. Like I could feel that in relation to, this overemphasis on a certain part of my life. In the process of eliminating importance, balanced forces create problems for the person that created it. Two forms of importance exist, inner and outer. Inner or personal importance represents an overestimation of your own virtues or shortcomings. The formula of inner importance goes along the lines of, I am an important person, or I do important work. When the arrow of perceived personal importance goes right off the scale, balanced forces get involved and the hotshot gets a disappointing slap. I'm sure we've all experienced that. They will discover that their work is either not needed at all, or that it is done badly. Puffing up your chest and sticking your nose in the air is only one side of the coin. The other side of the coin is excessive modesty and self-deprecation. The reader already knows what this leads to. The amount of excess potential is the same in both cases, the only difference being its positive or negative value. Outer importance is created when a person attributes huge meaning to an object or event taking place in the external world. This is where everybody is getting hung up on with not being able to create something, like using Neville techniques or whatever. In this case, the formula goes, such and such means an awful lot to me, or it is really important to me to do such and such. Sound familiar? Consequently, excess potential is created and things go wrong. Whereas the feeling of inner importance can be controlled, it is much harder to do so with outer importance. Imagine that you have to walk along a plank lying on the ground. Nothing could be easier. Now imagine you are forced to walk along the same plank which has been placed between the roofs of 2 high buildings. Walking the plank will have escalated in importance, and there will be nothing you can do to persuade yourself otherwise. The only way of eliminating outer importance is to have a safety net. The form the safety net takes will be subjective and depend on each situation. The most important thing is not to place everything on one side of the scales. There has to be some kind of counterbalance, protection, or alternative plan. I think I've made a few videos about manifesting a specific person and how important and what a relief it is to just remember how many other people there are out there. That's enough. Like, you don't have to start manifesting somebody else or a different relationship or whatever. You just have to remember that there are hundreds and hundreds, thousands of people that are just as good as your specific person, and that, you know, that alone should lower the value placed on that creation. I'm saying that here because I know a lot of people are here because of a specific person, but it's the same thing with whatever. There's always an alternative that will make you just as happy, and you just have to think of what it is, and that will automatically balance some of that excess potential. Anyway, essentially everything that can be said about importance has already been said above. There's nothing more to add. You may have made the connection already that in fact everything we've been talking about in this chapter is one variation or another on the theme of importance, inner and outer. All unbalanced feelings and reactions such as indignation, dissatisfaction, irritation, restlessness, anxiety, despondence, embarrassment, despair, blah, 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 are all manifestations of importance in one form or another. Excess potential is only created when you attribute excess importance to an object or event that exists inside or outside of yourself. So anything. This has really been where my mind is for the last few months. Every single thing in your life that causes you pain. I've been saying whatever you believe that causes you pain is false. Anything that you're trying to manifest is not that important. It just isn't. This is a really good time to think about that, because the coronavirus stuff, I think, is really illuminating that for a lot of people, what's really important. Anyway, projected importance creates excess potential, which calls forth the winds of balanced forces. These in turn lead to a mass of different problems, and life becomes a battle for survival. Now you can judge for yourself how much inner and outer importance complicates your life. But that is not all. Remember the puppet strings. Pendulums, I explained this in the other video. A pendulum is basically anything that energetically feeds off of you. So coronavirus, for example, is a perfect example of a pendulum. This is a huge pendulum, sucking everybody's energy down. Everyone is thinking about it. Everyone is experiencing it. This is the biggest pendulum I've ever heard of in my life, but I don't know if that illustrates it for you. Pendulums hook into your feelings and reactions: fear, anxiety, hatred, love, worship, call of duty, guilt, etc. As you now know, all these states are as a consequence of projected importance. This is a description of what happens. Imagine an object is standing in front of you. On an energetic level, the object is neutral, neither good nor bad. You approach the object, wrap it in importance packaging, step aside and look at it and gasp. Now you have created an attachment to the object. You are willing to give the pendulum your energy. Importance is like the carrot that makes a little donkey obediently plod along behind. A pendulum uses the same carrot to lock onto the frequency of your energy, drain it, and then lead you wherever it wants you to go. To return to a condition of harmony with the rest of the world and free yourself from the burden of the pendulum, you have to be able to diminish importance. You have to be able to keep your inner guardian from dozing off so that it can observe the level of importance you place upon yourself and the world around you. By reducing the level of importance you place on things, you immediately reestablish a state of balance. The emptiness, absence of excess potential, gives pendulums nothing to hook into, and consequently, no means of establishing control over you. This is so important. You may protest that I appear to be suggesting that we all numb ourselves into being lifeless statues. I am in no way urging anyone to reject all emotion or even reduce the intensity of the emotions they experience, because generally it is futile to fight your emotions. Trying to keep yourself in check and struggling to stay calm on the outside while everything is bubbling over on the inside just creates more and more excess potential. Emotions stem from attitudes, so rather than fight your emotions, it is more purposeful to change your attitude. Feelings and emotions are simply a consequence of your relationship or attitude to something, and that attitude is caused by one thing: importance. For me, I think it's key to accept this premise. If you agree with what's said here, if you agree that the level of importance creates this unnecessary, energetic, inflation, that makes you take too much of your energy. If you can accept that, then all you have to do is just remind yourself, I'm placing too much importance on this thing. And for me, it's instant relief. Almost any time I find myself upset now, like if I'm down for more than a few minutes, if I'm having one of those days where hours go by and something's really bothering me, it's always because I'm not remembering that it isn't that important. Most of the importance that we place on things has been conditioned into us through being raised and exposure to culture, society, stuff like that. It's not usually coming from us. That's been my observation. And you spend years and years telling yourself day in and day out that something is important, that this thing is so important. And, just like everything else, once you start learning this stuff and reading, this stuff and seeing evidence in your own life, that it's true, that your reality as you knew it really wasn't reality after all. It takes a little time to unlearn it. It takes time. You have to keep catching yourself. But it's great because for me, at least, knowing that this is true in my heart, like this speaks to me. I get it on a deep level that most of my pain and failure has been caused by placing way too much emphasis on something. Now it's just like an instant relief if I just remember it. I don't feel like shit very often anymore because usually within a half a day or so, I just go, oh, wait a second. Like, why am I feeling so bad about this? It's not that big of a deal. And that makes it so much easier to create something in an area where you have placed too much importance over the years. It just lowers it down to where everything else is, where you create anything else effortlessly. Like now that we have coronavirus, it's not quite as simple to get the dinner you want, but my example has always been, imagine what you want to eat for dinner, go obtain that thing for dinner, and you have just gone through the whole process of creation and in its most basic form. Anyway, this has gotten really long. Sorry, I've got a bunch of other parts I want to talk about in this book, but I guess I will do that later. Have a lovely evening. A lovely Saturday coronavirus evening.